again is coming to an end. This talk coming, and then just another one. So some other announcement from me, in case you don't have enough, you'll get a client from me. Thailand. That's the reason why we give a matrix between the Thailand. It's the FOSS Asia. And I just got a check 2 days ago. There will be a matrix stand. So if you want to participate there, just get in touch with me or with Kim. We will be there and try to organize something more matrix FOSS related. And now the stage goes for Kevin. He will talk up through Robrix. Is it Robrix?
Yeah, Robrix, yeah.
And yeah, give them a warm welcome and let's learn about Robrix and the future of Rust client. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. So yeah, I'll introduce myself first since I'm relatively new to the community. I started using Matrix only about a year ago, and we've been working on the parent project of this for just about a year. So it's everything to do with Rust app dev across multiple platforms. So my background is in academia, so I'm relatively new. In fact, this is my first FOSDEM, so I'm happy to be here. But yeah, thanks for sticking around to the afternoon. So what is Robrix? Robrix is a new Matrix client. We hope to make it a lot more than just Matrix, but that's kind of the beginning of the story. So these are some old screenshots. I'm purposefully keeping the old ones here, so I'll reveal the new ones coming up soon. But basically, we have a single code base that runs pretty seamlessly across all the major platforms. That's Linux, Windows, Mac OS, Android, iOS, and web, although it doesn't yet run on web because I didn't even know that the Matrix SDK supported web. I thought it was still broken until I saw Timo's talk this afternoon. So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, that's kind of the elevator pitch. So I do need to give some background information about what Robrix is and what the project overall is. So about a year, maybe a year and a quarter ago, we started Project Robrix, which is kind of a large community endeavor to make multi-platform app dev experience fully in Rust happen and to make it happen easily. So the idea is that developers can do things like leverage the features of Rust that everyone's familiar with and that we all like. We don't have to deal with multiple languages or different environments. It's just all Rust all the time. And you never have to write a single line of platform-specific code. So yeah, come on. And then the secondary goal here was to make mobile systems, iOS and Android namely, kind of a first-class concern and a first-class citizen within the Rust community, because historically it hasn't really been that targeted. So that's kind of a little bit of the parent project here. Like Matrix, Robrix is fully open source, decentralized, and community-driven. We have a bunch of different independent collaborators, some of who are funded by FutureWays, some of who are funded independently, and some of who are just open source contributors at large across the whole globe, and everything is written in Rust. So you may be asking, if you're familiar with some of the Rust community's long-standing GUI efforts, like why do we need Robrix, right? There's already a lot of great Rust UI toolkits. Things like Dioxys was already mentioned. There's things like eGUI and Iced, Leptos, Tori, and MakePad, which we're using, and then the Linebender crew has their own framework called Xylem, and a bunch of others. Pax is not on here. But the thing is, there's a lot more development and application, as many of you will know, than just drawing user a GUI interface, right? So traditionally, a lot of Rust apps like Signal or something have been more about the other code and less about the Rust code, where you have a lot of different platform-specific or language-specific wrappers around a single core of Rust. So this is definitely not that. This is the inverse. It's almost also the inverse of what Timo showed, which I'll get to later in his talk about WebAssembly. So then why Robrix? Why do we need another Matrix client? Well, I don't think that we necessarily do need another Matrix client, but we've done it anyway. The original motivation behind this was that we needed some kind of key or killer app to drive the development of all these different Robrix components, right? So all the platform integration, build tooling, all that stuff that the GUIs don't typically handle in the Rust space, right? So I was scratching my brains thinking, what kind of thing is highly demanding, specifically for UI and for platform abstractions? And we settled on a modern chat client, right? So as some of the other presenters have said today, there's a lot of additional features that chat has come to encompass over the last 10, 20 years. So it is really quite demanding of the platform. So these are just, a small list of some of the things that you need to support. All right. And then you may be also wondering, why did we pick Matrix? Well, I think, as I already alluded to, it shares our views, shares our values very nicely. Open source, decentralized, community driven. And as a bonus, it seems like a lot of the Matrix ecosystem is moving towards Rust, or at least focusing on it in a future looking way. So we're also doing that. I'm very excited to see all the Rust use here, because I've been a Rust contributor for many years now. So then once we had that, once we settled on writing a Matrix client, we thought, okay, I've written this client. It's pretty decent. There's still a long way to go, as you'll see. We're by no means complete. But looking forward, what else could we do? I think we can go further, right? Could we make a more unique client for power users or productivity's sake? And by that, I mean something that I would like to see. Can we do more things with the application rather than just a Matrix client? Perhaps make it a central hub for a bunch of different federated services, with focus on the needs for the open source developer community. Like myself, again, this is mostly about what I want. And then, combine a bunch of different other federated services and things that open source communities use in sort of a unique way. So I'll talk about that later. The idea here is, if we are able to create a very nice app, we can make a stronger case for Rust app dev, and then also a strong case for Matrix being the core of all of this. Okay, so just a little bit of boilerplate still. Let's talk about the goals of Project Robrix. So our main goal is to create a reference design, sort of a full system stack here for all the different components that you would need to create apps across multiple platforms purely in Rust. Right, so the UI, just the orange part, that's kind of everything that we don't deal with. Although I do contribute significantly to UI frameworks like MakePad and Dioxys. It would be, everything else you see here, right? Primarily in purple, but also in red. So I don't need to get into this. I don't have time. But this is kind of what the current architecture of the Robrix app looks like. It's the same sort of diagram, just a bunch of different details filled in. And basically, this is just to show that through developing Robrix, we have allowed that to guide the development of Project Robrix components, and also of the UI toolkits like MakePad. We've added quite a lot of features there. So doing this has forced us to dog food the components in a kind of an interesting and barely digestible manner in some cases. And we have made a lot of new contributions to, I think, the Rust UI space and the Rust app dev space in general. So again, I don't really want to bore you with the details here. But this is kind of our roadmap for the project. So we're just at the end of stage 1 here, which was basically to publish an app with all the basic fundamental Matrix client features that you would expect. So messaging, login, app persistence, end-to-end encryption. And then kind of, while doing that, flesh out the rest of the ecosystem we need to make this possible. In stage 2, we plan to add a little bit more functionality, perhaps integrating some local AI toolkits, AI tools with an LLM runtime. That was one of our other flagship app projects under the Robrix organization. And then have some additional things, which I'll show off in a demo shortly. So we hope to finish that thing by around the fall of this year. And then the future-looking stage, stage 3, is the more of the combination of different services here. And so I'll talk about this a little bit if I have time. I'm not sure. I think I made my presentation too long. So in stage 1, so far we've pretty much finished all the basics here. The only thing I didn't get a chance to do before this presentation was to implement editing message support. But we have all the major stuff that you would expect. So you can use it. And I have been daily driving Robrix for about 3 or so months. Doesn't support a lot of stuff that you would still expect, like you can't join a room yet, so that's tough. Doesn't support notifications, which is my other, I think, big blocker. But in order to do that, we have to actually implement all the platform notifications for all the different platforms. So we have published some pre-alpha versions. I just published a second pre-alpha, and I would like to emphasize pre a lot. So if you try this out, which I would encourage you to, and you hit some bugs, know that we are fixing a lot of things, mostly at the platform layer. On a daily basis. And so this required us to kind of develop a lot of the build tooling for releasing code signing on macOS and Apple, notarizing and packaging up all these things into an app bundle, which is kind of annoying if you're not using the platform native build toolchain and language, right? So to do this in Rust is actually a pretty big hurdle to overcome. Thanks. And then we also spent a long time kind of establishing a nice little framework within the app, which I want to then abstract away and, allow other folks to use it too for hitting high performance metrics and efficiency metrics, despite the inherent asynchronous and the inherent heavy concurrency of something like a client. And the key, which I'll cheekily say, is to do nothing on the main thread. And I really mean that. So if I have time, I can go into that. But basically, we don't ever make a single matrix call on the main thread, and everything is done purely on the backside on the back end, because there is absolutely no asynchronous support on the UI main thread in MakePad, which is our UI toolkit. So yeah, just to show another thing, we do have complete platform support from the very beginning. So that was kind of the goal. And then we're adding, as we add more features, we ensure that we are only doing it once we have all of the platforms supported. So there's a slide later on that shows more detail about the platforms, but this is kind of just an overview. And then this is our feature tracker, a screenshot that I took, I think, a couple days ago, showing that yes, indeed, we have made pretty decent progress and we're ready for daily usage. So I mentioned a big part of Project Robrix, which has been driven by Robrix, the Matrix client, is to develop all these platform abstractions. I'm not going to go into all of these, but over the last roughly a year, this is where we're at now. So green is things that are largely complete, orange are things that have begun or are partially complete, but not really ready for production use. So you can see something like camera support. There's a reason we don't support QR-based login yet, because I don't have the ability to view a camera on all of the different platforms in our Aptiv ecosystem. So yeah, that's where we are. Okay, that was a lot of kind of boring boilerplate stuff. Let's get to a demo. All right, so I'll start off with Android because this thing absolutely destroys my computer. The simulator, I don't know why it's so blurry. Okay, I think that's an issue with the... okay, it's fine on my screen. Oh yeah, okay. Can't tab. Oh, we also don't support emoji yet, working on that. That's a UI toolkit issue. Did I mistype my password? Okay, no, we're good. Yeah, we are using the native simplified sliding sync, so I'm happy with that. Okay, this one is good, so maybe it's just an issue with Android. Okay. Anyways, yeah, you get everything that you expect. This is iOS. Nothing too particularly weird here. I didn't verify this session, so we're having some kind of errors here. But yeah, I mean, you get rich text formatting, which we spent a while implementing. Didn't have that. You get okay, that's not wanting to load. There we go. Definitely pre-alpha. So on desktop, it's a lot. I think it's a lot. Okay, thank you. It's a lot more stable. So here is the macOS version. You can see that open at about maybe 200 milliseconds. It's incredibly fast. So for that, that's basically what we've earned by doing our due diligence, writing everything from scratch in Rust, making sure we don't have any garbage collection, we don't have any weird memory safety errors, and we don't do anything on the main thread. So one thing that always bothered me with a lot of clients, and this is not to, shit talk anyone here, but there's a lot of I think wasted white space, right? So my entire life runs on Discord, unfortunately, because it seems like a lot of open source communities use that. I used it for my open source projects as well. One thing that I never liked about Discord, and it's seemingly a lot of other clients, is that you can't use the whole width of your screen. So this screen is not very wide, but if you have a 49-inch ultra wide screen, that's not the case. So we're able to have sort of a multi-pane dockable tabbed view here, where you can basically emulate kind of what you'd get from an IDE. And the idea is, as we add more widgets. Oh, thanks. Hey, I'll take it. I will take it. So as you add more widgets and more features, right, they would continue to be dockable tabs just like this, right? So yeah, I mean, here it is, generally okay. You got some white space issues there, but that's all right. Okay, thanks. And yeah, I would also like to highlight that it's really quite fast. So I've been easily able to hit 144 FPS on my other screen that supports that. I don't think here we're going to get that because it's probably capped to 60. But hopefully it's showing up that it's quite responsive. All right. So again, this is due to the massive amount of work that we put into the UI toolkit and the platform abstractions underneath. Right. So just to give an example, I mean, we do have generally support for locations. So here I'll say, hi there, I'm going to share my location. And let's see if it works. Okay. I don't know what that is, but we'll find out. So hopefully you guys can see that. And then, yeah, we're able to show all these other nice little widgets here. I don't know. So yeah, if there are any other questions or any other things you'd like to see, I'm happy to show this off later. You can also install it and try it out. Not everything is perfect across every platform, but that's sort of just growing pains. But that's kind of the, I don't know, 2-minute demo of what's going on here. So yeah, we have all these nice little tabbable UIs. Okay, I think that's good enough for the demo. Let's go back to the talk. Okay, great. So as you saw, we have overcome quite a few implementation challenges to get to that point, just to have things basically working. There were a lot of practical, like unexciting UI features that many GUI toolkits don't really focus on. Like being able to show a context menu. Just 2 weeks ago, I had to re-implement all of our platform abstraction code so we could actually differentiate between different mouse buttons, right? Didn't have that before. So there's a lot of practical kind of business logic oriented stuff that we've had to do. One of the things I also mentioned was rich text formatting. So we took, myself and the developer of MakePad, Rick Arens, took a couple of weeks to write an HTML parser and then have it render in the MakePad native widget format. So that's where we're able to get super fast, rich text formatting, like hopefully you agree that you saw. Other things that I've mostly been working on are exposing and abstracting all these platform-specific APIs and OS services, right? So you saw the location one. There's a bunch of others. I showed some others for like biometric authentication. So I do plan to shortly add a feature for something like, marking a room as private, so you can hide it behind a fingerprint or something. And the only way we can do that is by implementing all of these different platform APIs and abstracting them. So the Rust community, I think, is pretty good. There's a good amount of stuff in the Rust ecosystem that we've been able to reuse or contribute to. One example is like keychain and secret storage. So you can like take your session key that you get from the Matrix SDK and store it in, if you want to, a secure storage facility provided by the underlying OS. And we need to make that work across all the 5 platforms. I mentioned some of the builds, multi-step build issues with dealing with packaging and combining cargo and non-cargo build procedures. All of these things. I think I'll skip some of the details. And then, of course, I think, like many Rust developers, our main goal is high performance in the face of concurrency. So I alluded to this previously. Do nothing on the main UI thread, and I really mean that. So using the Matrix SDK, there's a lot of things that are async. We explicitly made the choice within MakePad and within our overall development toolkit. We do support async and offer async APIs for all those platform abstraction feature crates, but I don't use them generally because I don't think it's necessary, and I think it actually hurts a little bit more than it helps. So if you look at something like Flutter, you can do asynchronous workloads on the main UI thread, and I think they call them like micro tasks. I forget the exact nomenclature. But if you're not careful, you can actually cause frame stutters and other things. So we just made the conscious decision to ban that right up at the top. So everything is routed through this sort of like concurrency management framework here, which I don't think I have a lot of time to go into. But effectively, there's 3 classes of mixed concurrency contexts. One is the UI main thread, which has to do some things. Unfortunately, like Mac OS and some other Apple platforms, and I think some others, require certain things to happen on the main thread, which is really annoying. But anytime we call an SDK function, because most of them are async, but even the ones that aren't, I've noticed in digging around in the implementation, a lot of them do acquire internal locks, which is something I do not want to allow on the main UI thread. So we always call out to some sort of async runtime, async thread pool in the background and make sure that we're not ever waiting for those things on the UI thread. There's a lot of other details. We make copious usage of things like thread local caches to do things in a lock-free manner that the UI thread can access and hopefully, never get bogged down or never have hiccups. We're working on moving literally everything off the main thread, including things like image decoding. That's currently not there, but it's still fast enough, but we can always go faster. And then we have a bunch of other techniques that I don't really have time to get into. I only have 5 minutes? Okay, geez. So in terms of platform support, this is what's out there currently. I'm excited to support web. MakePad also has native support for web, and most of the platform abstraction crates that we've implemented also do work there. Or you can integrate something like Wazi. And then we also want to support a lesser known platform called OpenHarmony, which is sort of like the open source version of Huawei's Harmony OS, which is widely used in China, especially now that they've dropped support for Android on their new devices. So this could potentially bring Matrix to, 1 billion new users or so. Sure. Sorry. So I might have to power through here. So looking forward, so that was stage one, right? We've hit a lot of the kind of main fundamental features. So some things that I frequently miss are like the ability to, when I come back from vacation, I have hundreds of Discord messages in one of my things, and I'd love to know like what the hell happened without having to skim through all of them. So there are some things that LLMs can help with and AI can help with in a limited and tasteful capacity. So I want to make sure that we straddle that line and we're not, going and doing ridiculous stuff like forcing AI down everyone's throats. Okay, I'll skip all this stuff. So we already did the multi-pane dockable tab. Yeah. So you saw that. Okay, right. So I think one of the key tenets of Matrix, as we all know, is end-to-end encryption, and we want to preserve that. So how can we bring in AI? You obviously don't want to send off your entire encrypted room message history up to OpenAI and upload it to ChatGPT. Probably your fellow room users wouldn't be a fan of that. So how can we do that without, exposing our data? So the key there is local large language models, right? And this is definitely easier said than done on desktop devices, desktop platforms rather than mobile. But there are some models that are emerging that can be run mobilely. So we could do some cool features like this, and we can do, maybe some other longer term goals where we're using Matrix once we have this to share different agent recipes or chatbot demonstrations and help other people configure it through Matrix, all in sort of a seamless manner. But the idea is to leverage one of our other flagship projects called Motion, which is basically a local LLM runtime. If you're familiar with LLM Studio, it's an open source version of this. This is also the same exact thing that you just saw in Robrix. It's entirely in Rust, entirely from scratch using MakePad and Project Robrix. So you can see you can have customizable chats with the different LLM models that you've installed on your device. You can select them. So I think this would be relatively quite straightforward to integrate into Robrix itself. So I don't have too much time to talk about this. I also worked on this, packaging it and getting all the platform features there. Am I low on time? Okay.
There's only one type, so maybe.
Okay. Yeah. But there's a lot of features that we can use. So work has actually already begun to separate out all of these different components of Motion and modularize them such that we could just do something like this, right? Where you're able to select a model that you've installed locally. This will run using the WASM runtime, which has a wide variety of models already supported and is getting updated every day. So DeepSeek is already available.